In today's 7 Days to Die video, we're going to take a look at the absolutely broken Nomad armor. Let's get to it. You know what's annoying in survival games? Having to eat and drink. It's annoying in real life as well sometimes. You just don't want to have to do it, and you want to do whatever you're doing and not have to think about eating or drinking. Well, I'm here to tell you today that you can pretty much make that obsolete in 7 Days to Die with the Nomad armor more than you think you can. To the point where you can actually regen food and water just by spending stamina. Yes, it's that broken. So for you to understand what's going on here today, we need to take a look at a few things in the XML files, a little bit of code. Bear with me, we're going to get nerdy for just a second. So this is the code for our food and water drain in game. You can see that our base drain over time is 0.0111, and this is about 40 per hour. This is real life hour, not in-game hour. And that value is directly related to the name water change over time. You can also see we have another name there, water loss per stamina point gain, and the base value for that is 0.00453. So every point of stamina you spend, you lose that much water. Very small amount, but it adds up over time. Same thing for food. Our food change over time is a different number, but it is there, and that is 0.00833, and that equates to about 30 points of food per real life hour. And our food loss per point of stamina gained is 0.00408. If we take a look at the buff for wearing a full set of Nomad armor, while we are only taking a look at the code for the tier 6 version here, all of the other versions work the exact same. You can see that it directly affects our food loss per stamina point gained and our water loss per stamina point gained stats, and reduces that by 30%. And the code for the Nomad helmet is the exact same. You can see here where it has the value per the tier. Those numbers align with each other. So tier 1 is 0.1, tier 2 0.2, and so on and so on. And that affects, once again, the same stat per point of stamina gained for food and water. And last but not least, we also have slow metabolism, aka iron gut, which affects the exact same stats. I would also like to point out, and we saw this stat too when we looked at our code for our character, the water loss per health point gained. You should lose water per health point gained, but you don't, and you lose food. And I actually covered that in another video, which I will link down below if you want to check that out. I think there's some bugginess going on in the code, but when you regen health, you lose food, not water, even though all of the XML files state that you should lose water. But that doesn't really matter too much with what we're talking about here today. I just wanted to point it out just in case people notice it and are confused. Okay, so now we've seen the code for the Nomad armor, and we've seen the code for our character as well as Iron Gut, and you can probably guess where we're going with this. Yes, they do all stack for an absolute insane amount of reduction to our food and water loss per point of stamina we gain. So much so that it actually goes into the negative percentile, and you can't have negative percent because then you start to add to the total. So up at the top here, I have a little graph that shows our actual stat in game for our food loss per point of stamina gained. And you can see that it corresponds with exactly what we saw in the code before, and it's going to update in real time. So first, let's put on our Nomad helmet. If we wear it, you can see that that value reduces automatically down to 0.1632. Now, if we just go ahead and put on the rest of the set, we get the additional bonus, which drops us down to 0.004079998. So we're getting even smaller numbers. So now let's go over here to our fortitude and let's spec into Iron Gut. And if we put a point in there, you can see it gets even lower. And if we put another point in there, oh no, something happened. And what happened is we just hit a 100% reduction. So as stated, the full set gives us 30, our helmet gives us 60, that puts us at 90. And at 2 points into Iron Gut, it gives us an additional 10% reduction, which puts us at an even 100. So that's why we get that strange number there. So right now we are not losing any water or food per point of stamina gain. Now you still lose water and food for a lot of different things, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But right now for regenning stamina, we don't lose any food or water, which is massive in its own right. But if we go ahead and we put some more points in there, now we're at full negatives. So you can see there negative 002, and then it follows with a bunch of smaller numbers, another point, so on and so on. And now once we have Iron Gut maxed out, we are at a 0.0061200 0.001 points of food and water gained per point of stamina that we regen. So unfortunately, I can get a graph for water up here that we can see water in real time, but for some reason, putting in the food stat just doesn't work. Don't know why. Like I said before, food is wonky, but I can show you food regenning. So if we take a look at our stats here, we can actually see the value for our food in game. And you can see that it has ticked down to 199 out of 200. You can also see our current value of our food loss per point of stamina gained up at the top there. If I drink a red tea, and the downside to all of this is to get it to actually regen, you have to drink a red tea to put it high enough that it can counteract our natural loss over time. But you can see we're at 199 right now. I've only drank the red tea. It does nothing else but give me water, and it gives us a buff, which is an additional 15% to our food loss and our water loss per stamina point gained. So if I just attack with this hammer a little bit here and jump up and down and spend some stamina, we have to spend a decent amount of stamina in order to actually get it to regen. But after spending a decent amount of stamina and allowing it to regen, you can see there in real time that it actually just ticked back up to 200. Now we can see this much better with water. However, water ticks down faster than our food does. But unlike food, I can actually show you with a live real-time graph in game of our water stat and the numbers as they are affected by our stamina regen. So as you can see there, our water stat is live up at the top and it is ticking down without us doing anything. That is our natural water loss over time. Now, if we do something like do a heavy attack, we will lose a chunk of stamina as well as a large chunk of our water. For some reason, I don't see it in the code anywhere, but if you do heavy attacks or sprint, if we sprint, you can see it's ticking down much faster. So sprinting and heavy attacks will reduce your food and water faster. However, jumping does not. And if we jump to spend a bunch of stamina, it will tick up. And if I just do normal light attacks, you can see that that number is going up instead of down because our stamina is regenning and we're not actually spending any additional on top of our normal base degen that happens over time. And if I just continue to attack using our light attacks, because I'm not spending any additional food and water in order to do this, it will actually tick up to the point where it will tick all the way back up to 200, meaning that I'm actually generating food and water in game without ever actually eating anything, which is insane. It's absolutely insane. But I'll admit that it gets a little crazy because in order for this to actually be values that are high enough to affect our natural degen over time, we have to drink the red tea to get that negative percentage high enough, as you see there up at the top, to 0.001224. Anything less than that, and it's very difficult to actually counteract our natural water and food loss just over time, let alone if we do anything like doing a heavy attack or sprinting. And as you can see there, our water just went back to 200. And if we go over and take a look at our food's only at 199. If I was to just sit here and continue to expend stamina and regen it, our food would actually go back up to 200 as well, as you saw there before. So what's the practicality of this? Well, essentially, you can't completely stop your food and water loss altogether because the stats, as we saw and discussed, that are affected by our armor and our iron gut and the red tea are only the stats that affect our loss of food and water for regenning stamina. And as I showed you, you lose food and water just over time, as well as for doing other things like heavy attacking or sprinting. And unfortunately, while it is possible to regen our food and water by spending stamina, in order to actually accomplish that, we do have to drink a red tea. And overall, it's not super practical to do. However, wearing a tier 6 set of nomad armor and having at least 2 points into iron gut completely eliminates your food and water burn per point of stamina gained, period. And if you go further into iron gut, maxing it out, just your normal actions, even though that you won't actively regen enough to regen full points of food and water while your stamina is regenning, you will fight against it because you are gaining an amount back. It's just not enough to completely counteract what you are losing naturally over time, but it does fight against that loss. So for example here, just to make it easier to understand, let's just use whole numbers. Let's say for example, you lose 5 points of food and water per second second as your base food and water loss, and you are so far into the positives that you're regenning 2 points per point of stamina regen, and you regen 1 stamina per second. Now, once again, this is all just hypothetical to give you an idea of what's going on here. It basically just reduces that loss from 5 to 3. So that's what's happening, but it's on a much smaller scale because we're dealing with very small fractions of numbers here, and you actually regen more than 1 stamina per second, but I digress. Anyway, it's still very OP because not only does it fully eliminate the amount of food and water you burn for burning stamina, it also fights back against your natural loss over time, slowing it down drastically. And if you never sprint or never heavy attack, you will hardly have to eat at all. You'll seriously be able to sustain yourself on like 1 red tea and 1 baked potato per like 3 in-game days. Like, it's nuts. It's absolutely insane. So if you're playing on a very, very hard mode where food and water and such is extremely scarce, this is definitely the armor you want to go with. Or if you're just playing on normal settings and you just hate having to eat and drink all the time, this is definitely the armor you want to go with. I would highly suggest that if you do tend to sprint a lot, just try to avoid heavy attacks because they'll burn through a lot more food and water. Heavy attacks also burn through a lot, so just keep those 2 things in mind. Those are the 2 that I've noticed so far. Jumping doesn't seem to do anything. Burning stamina by doing other things like light attacks or taking stuff apart with the wrench, none of that affects your food and water loss. It seems to be, so far from what I can tell, only heavy attacks and sprinting, which is just good information to know, period, even if you're not wearing nomad armor, because it can help you burn less food and water in a general situation. Anyway, that's all I have for you for this one. Hopefully you all found this video helpful and informational. If you did, please consider hitting the subscribe button and notification bell so you can be notified when I upload other 7 Days to Die videos. And if you're looking for some more of my content, you can find a link to another one of my videos on the screen right now. I want to give an absolute massive shout out and thank you to all of my channel supporters for helping to keep these videos sponsor free. You all are absolutely amazing people. If you would like to become an official channel supporter, check out the links in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you're shy, you don't like to comment, just hit that thumbs up button and share your support. Until next time, thanks for watching.